Kwaba, Mr. Steve, thank you, and thanks.
REFLEX, Brian's introduced the company to you, but we're innovators. We've been around since the mid-70s and got a lot of work experience in the R&D world, developing technologies, downhole survey tools, core orientation devices, and structural logging tools in the last year, and also experience in drilling and geological data acquisition systems and analysis. We do a lot of work. We work for over 600 companies in 50 countries, and our software management, data management software solutions are used by over 500 companies worldwide. Next slide. And we've won a few technologies. This is one we won from the West Australian Government last year for our cloud-based data hosting solution, which I'll talk a little bit more about in a few minutes. And we've also been involved in some truly significant world global events over the years, from the Channel Tunnel, helping the British and the French join that tunnel up without getting it wrong. The Chilean mining disaster 7 years ago, we had our guys on the ground there helping direct the drill holes with our tools to make sure they intersected the underground cavern where the miners were trapped, and that was truly a fantastic success, bringing them out alive. And finally, even 9/11 in the US of A at Ground Zero, our tools were being used to make sure the ground stability and building stability could be kept. So, moving to the guts of my talk, this is a bit of an overview. I'm going to take us on a bit of a journey from the past to the present and into the future with drilling tools and technologies. I'm going to talk a bit about data and all the tools that we use to produce data that we use to make decisions in our everyday lives, professional lives, and things like the collection of data and how we transmit it, the management of that data, the QAQC. I'm going to harp on about that a little bit. How do we know that when that tool gives us those downhole surveys, those surveys are good, and can we trust them? And also the integration and visualisation of those data streams. How do we use it to interpret it and make a decision? And then I'll talk a little bit about our tools, the technologies, and some of the new tools that have come into the market, like North Sea and gyros, petrophysical and geophysical tools that are now driller operable rather than having a service company coming out, and structural logging tools, which is the area I'm working in with REFLEX, being an old geologist. How do we make logging those bedding planes an enjoyable pastime? So from the past, this is the world that I grew up in as a geologist. We had multiple tools and service providers. These tools were often quite complicated. They needed specialist operators, specialist calibration routines. They were very fragile, and they were slow. When I started geology, they'd give me an Eastman camera survey disc, and it'd be written on an envelope, and I'd have to transcribe it into a book, and then that would be passed up the line to the office, and you'd plot that manually, and that took a lot of time. And it also introduced the possibility of manipulation of that data. When things weren't quite right, you might have added a fudge factor just to make things look right, which could cause problems down the track. And going to the future from that, we're seeing a revolution of intelligent, robust, simple to operate tools. And these are tools, downhole core orientation devices, hole survey tools, petrophysical tools that a driller or a field technician or a field assistant can operate in quite a robust, reliable manner. We're seeing the internet and cloud computing facilitate communication. So two-way communication, clients and drillers talking to each other, communicating what they need to know. We're seeing integration of data from multiple sources and tools in the cloud, and that produces robust data. And that data can be exported into your mine planning packages like Surpack or DataMine or MicroMine to be used to make decisions. And the new tools that are coming onto the market now, they have smarts inside of them. They're all digital, and they can actually capture the operating parameters that they're working under and advise you when things are out of tolerances. So a bit about data flows and integration, and these days we use the internet and cloud software solutions to facilitate this, and this results in seamless, transparent, secure, and almost near real-time data flow. If you're on a drill rig and your tools, digital tools are capturing information, you may not have the internet at the rig, but I'm sure when you go back to the camp at night or go back to the town, you'll have access to a mobile phone tower or a satellite dish and be able to communicate this information. And it's also facilitating two-way communication. So things like between the client and the driller, drill holes and programs can be communicated to the driller. Operating parameters, daily drill reports can be communicated back to the client electronically. Tool data can be passed up the line. QAQC can be done on that data, and then either the geologist or the drill supervisor or the mining engineer can approve that data as fit for purpose. And this is just a picture of how it all works. So you've got all these tools at the bottom of the diagram: downhole survey tools, gamma tools, handheld XRF units, core orientation devices, rig aligners, the IQ structural logging tool, and these are all digitally enabled. They'll talk through a tablet or a small ruggedised PDA, communicate to what we call the hub, which is a staging post in the cloud, and then in that cloud you can send your daily drill reports out for approval, or the data can then go to the company databases. And this is an example of my world, how all these tools play together. We can align our drill rig using a TN14 rig aligner. We use a gyro survey tool to map the path of that hole in 3 dimensions. We then use a core aligner to align our drill core, put an orientation line on. And then finally we use this little rodent here, the IQ logger, to make our structural measurements, calculate our alpha and beta angles and the attitude of our bedding planes. And then all those tools independently communicate to the cloud, into this staging platform, the hub, and integrate. So that produces readjusts these structural readings to take into account the 3-dimensional path of the hole, and then that can be exported out of the cloud into your software, like in this case the IO gas software we market for exploratory data analysis, or Leapfrog, or MicroMine, or those other products. And I can look, in about the time I've taken to talk to you, I can look at that plot there. I can see my structural readings plotted up on a plot like that, and I can test to see whether my structural model of my ore body is doing what the actual readings are telling me. So QAQC, just to change step a little bit here, this is something I'm getting a lot of involvement in now. We're used to doing QAQC on our assay readings to make sure the gold's in the ground, but we've been a bit slack in times past about QAQCing the survey tools that map our drill holes, or the tools that we use to make our structural readings. And this can be quite important. And some of the moments here, the ore body's moved, my pit walls failed, or my diamond drill holes lifted. These are things that have happened to me over my career, and they cost money and time. And in severe cases, I've actually seen 1 or 2 gold pits that have prematurely finished because they couldn't afford the cost of a cutback, because the whole pit was put in the wrong spot to start with. So very important QAQC, that the underlying data is accurate and correct. And For downhole survey tools and drilling tools generally, this can occur at a number of levels. We can use the old human eyeball and just look at the readings and compare the readings between each other and say, well, okay, that reading's 20 degrees out, maybe something's wrong there, maybe we should discard that. But in the modern world, these tools are all got smarts built in, and they're semi-intelligent, so they can tell us operating parameters. If we have a downhole gamma tool, logging speed is important, and we can capture that speed and see when the driller's been winding it in too quickly or pulling it out too quickly and it's exceeding the speed that the tool's designed to operate. We can also, with our core orientation tools, tell whether the tool's being used correctly by the drillers, and that's very important. So the tool's not being used correctly, the readings might be total rubbish. And then finally, the tools can also collect their operating parameters. So things like temperature, frequency, the rotation of the Earth, which influences gravity readings for gyroscopes, roll angles. These can all be captured, and we can set tolerances on that. And so for example, here for a magnetic survey tool, we can set the tolerances of the magnetic field and say, look, if it goes out of more than 10 nanoteslas out of range for this part of Ghana, then we know we're going into magnetic ground, and we've got to be very careful that we, whether we should use that actual reading or not. You can also visualise those plots in the cloud with a very simple diagram like this that just plots the whole trajectory. And with all of this, we can give the geologist or the mining engineer the information they need to ascertain whether the results this tool has produced are fit for their purpose and that they can use them with confidence. And then when they say that, they can tick the approve button and it's available to export out to the company databases. This one's a particularly turgid little picture, a lot of detail, but this is what we come off our Act 3 core orientation tool, and this will tell us through the readings here that the driller has successfully aligned the core, the core barrel had stopped rotating, and give us all this information. We've got confidence the tool has been used correctly. We can't tell you whether the driller's made the wax pencil mark correctly, but that's probably something for the future. So, moving on from the cloud and QAQC, really just touch on 3 tool technologies that have hit the market in the last year or even this year, and north-seeking gyros for surveying hole paths, petrophysical tools or geophysical tools. These are just starting to come into the realm of being used by drillers rather than service companies. And finally, structural logging devices, and this is the area that I'm working in, the IQ logger. So first off, the REFLEX Easy Gyro. This hit the market, I think, last year. It's a north-seeking gyro, and all measurements reference geographic north. So, like all gyroscopes, magnetic ground doesn't disturb this tool. Historically, these tools have been used by service providers, so that's meant a lot of cost, extra personnel on site, and time, because they've had to download the data and then ship it to you. But they're now driller operable, so other big benefit is no alignments required. All you have to do is enter the latitude of your location and the tool does the rest. You can do both diamond and RC holes, and there are innovative mounting solutions which I'll cover off in the next couple of slides that can save a lot of time and effort. There are a couple of limitations. Latitude, luckily Ghana, like Australia, that's not a problem, but if you're in Canada or Scandinavia, yeah, the tool is less accurate. Also horizontal holes, so if you're doing underground drilling and you've got horizontal holes plus or minus 30 degrees of vertical, the gyro tools at the moment can't cope with that, but the next generation will, and they are not far off. Innovative ways of mounting it, putting the gyro behind, integrating it with the overshot, and that's the device that goes down the drill hole to retrieve the core barrel and bring your diamond core out. So this is a great labour saving device. It goes down the hole every time you go and retrieve the core barrel. So every time you retrieve the core barrel, you survey your hole. You don't have to run the tool in separately. So that saves time, that saves money, makes everybody's life easier. You can also integrate these tools. So this is a Gyro Tool integrated with a downhole gamma total radiometric count tool. This is deployed by a driller. It shares the battery. Its length is less than a 3 metre core barrel, and which leads us to the Easy Gamma tool. And this is the first Reflex introduced this to the market the beginning of last year, I seem to remember. And it's the first driller operable geophysical tool available to the market. It's a memory tool, so you don't have to have an active wireline. All you need to do is hook it up to the standard wireline you'll see on any diamond drill rig. And it's fairly sensitive, got a good range of logging speeds. And when it comes out of the hole, it just downloads over Bluetooth to a Android tablet, and the driller and the geologist on the rig can see the data in real time. That's a first too. Often the survey companies would have to process the data and then send it back to you a couple of days later. That's an example of the application on the Android tablet, and the trace here of going in and out of the drill hole. There's very good agreement. Look, we've talked about the workflows, but in this case here, the tool feeds to the app on the tablet. That goes up to the hub, and then in the hub, the geologist at the mine site, or even the exploration manager sitting in London, can see that data in almost real time once it hits the hub. We've done a lot of test work, and it's quite accurate and compares very well to wireline service company data. And it's also very well calibrated, so we've seen some uptake in the uranium exploration industry for using this tool as well. And finally, this is an example last year, a company, Wallace Drilling, who runs small Aircore rigs. This is a Toyota Land Cruiser. They can actually put that in a sea container and ship it anywhere in the world. I believe they have had them on the African continent. They put a small wireline on this Aircore rig, and for a mineral sands company in Australia, and this mineral sands company were using this tool on the Aircore rig to map heavy mineral concentrations, and it gave the geologist in the field in real time a hell of a lot more information about where mineral sands accumulations were at a lot finer detail than a 1 metre sample. Finally, this example here, the super pit is Kalgoorlie, and this is probably the largest gold mine in Australia, and they drilled a 3,000 metre drill hole underneath the pit last year. And 3,000 metres, it takes a long time to go down and retrieve that core barrel and come back out, do bit changes, so they wanted to speed up the process. So this was where we designed the Easy Gyro and the Easy Gamma tool together on one assembly and ran them together. And a bit hard to see, but the super pit is quite a deep hole. You can see it from space. It's almost 1 kilometre deep, and this is the drill hole going underneath it. The interesting thing I was told afterwards was there was no wireline services company in the mineral industry in Australia that could run a gamma tool for 3 kilometres. They didn't have enough wireline. So this was probably the deepest hole in Australia that a driller has run such tools down. So it was a very good outcome. KCGM, the company, were very impressed, and we thought it was a really good effort. And this is just an example of some of the gamma data that came out of the hole. Very good quality, but in this case here we're at 2,800 metres. And finally, the IQ logger. This is my baby that I've spent the last 18 months nurturing. And this is a device that's about the size of a mouse. It acts like a Wii controller. If you've ever played Nintendo Wii, it's got a gyroscope and a laser in it. and you use the laser just to align to the bedding planes or faults or structures in your core, and the gyroscope knows this is a truly three-dimensional tool, and knows its attitude in space. And that feeds back by Bluetooth to a computer, and the geologist, with the click of a button, can measure the alpha beta angles and then reduce that to dip and dip directions in almost real time. And this example here, we orientate the core, we take the reading. The software that we have on our laptop has stereo nets built in, so when he clicks the button taking that reading, they can see it plotted in real time. You have no idea, when I was a lot younger, the pain I had of having to reduce alpha and beta angles with stereo nets, and you'd avoid doing that for months unless there was a real problem. But now I can get that information immediately. I can feed it up into the cloud, and then with my gyro or my Easy Track magnetic survey tool, recalculate those alphas and betas to give me true dip and dip directions on a curved hole trace. Because as we all know, for those of the geologists in the room, you drill a deep hole, it may end up somewhere totally different to where you thought it would be. And then finally, that data can be taken out of the cloud, exported and brought into various software packages. This is an example of our IO gas, which started off as a geochemical analysis package. We've now got stereo nets in it, and in this case here we've got a data set with gold values plotted against structures, and I can look at that and sort of derive some meaning and understanding and help me predict where my gold mineralisation may be going. So the near future, there's got a lot more work on the gyro world. We're going to go for solid state downhole gyros, and these will allow us to handle a lot better operating conditions, take us to horizontal drill holes. We're going to see further tool integration. If you, like the oil industry, you can run one assembly of tools down the hole, it's one trip in and out of the hole rather than half a dozen trips. So that'll improve, reduce costs and improve efficiencies. And other petrophysical driller operable tools. I suppose the emphasis is driller operable, so that removes the need for another truck on your drill site, which might be difficult in rugged terrain. And things like magnetic susceptibility, resistivity, conductivity, and even spectrometers, gamma spectrometers. These are all tools that are in development at the moment and will come out in the next few years that will be operated by drillers or field assistants rather than survey companies. And new data visualisation methods. So if we go to the next slide, this is something the CSIRO in Australia are developing, and as one of my colleagues says, it takes this wiggly line of information and with this mathematical processing reduces that line into a number of categories which the geologists can then look at and derive understanding from. Because in this day and age, we are swimming and drowning in data. All these tools are throwing data at us. We currently, if we do our assays, we often do for 50 elements now, and we need to have something to help us derive meaning. So at the end of the day, more triangles. We're getting away from this where we're spending most of the time, as I say, kludging our data and knocking it into shape to be able to get meaning, and turning the pyramid upside down, so where that takes very little time and we spend most of our time deriving knowledge and generating action plans to make decisions. So on that note, I'll say thank you.
Of the geologist, who does the final ultimate interpretation?
Once we've decided, or somebody, the geologist or the manager has decided that the tool information is good and correct, the interpretation is often the geologist or the engineer, and they will sit down with that information and assess it with other data streams like your geological mapping if it's in an underground situation, and then derive the meaning from that data, whether the meaning is a new exploration target or whether it's where that fault plane is going to break through the backs of the drive. It'll be typically the geologist or the engineer in my world.
They don't involve you?
Only if I'm acting in a consultancy role. And prior to taking the IQ logger over, I spent 10 years as a geochemical consultant. But for me personally, I would much rather, and a lot of my work historically was to come to places like Africa and Southeast Asia and run training courses and technology transfers. And so I'd much rather see leave my knowledge with, say, you guys to do it yourself. And I just act as a sort of a helper behind the scenes rather than me doing it. There's a truism in the world is if you do it yourself, you will learn a lot more than having an expert come on site, do it, leave a nice shiny report and then bolt back to wherever he or she has come from.
Maybe we are developing, we need to drill a pilot hole to ascertain whatever is behind it. However, the bit size is about 42 mm. Can your technology fit through, or it's only designed for the diamond drill ones, which have 120 mm?
Look, Brian might be able to help me here on this one.
Yeah, I can answer that. So yeah, we got a small tube from 22 mm.
And that's another, it just reminds me of that downhole gamma tool. The actual Aircore Rig is a very tiny rod, and this is the slimmest gamma tool available on the market at the moment. So it'll fit down holes that no other tools will.
I'm an old miner, and I'm used to, drilling your hole and getting the surveyor to come and pick the hole, and at times you don't even know how meandering the hole is. We just assume that it's a straight line and we make our interpretation. This brings into mining some of the technologies that have been developed in the oil industry, and I think it helps a lot. So we as Association of Professionals, I think that we should take advantage of some of these that have been mentioned, and in our various positions, let's consider modernizing the things that we do. The world that we live in is changing very, very fast. This is the way, the direction that the world is going, where you want to have everything live. It's instant. You don't need to start doing calculations at the caller survey and all that. That's all done for you. Like it was being asked whether is the interpretation will be done by these geologists or it's already done. So you see how integrated we've come to, where like a lot of information that we have to struggle to get is almost available to us. Well, thank you very much, Steve. Let's give a hand of applause.